Let's bring in Ron Martinelli, retired police officer, forensic legal analyst, and certified medical investigator. Let me just start with this, Ron. What is the first question on your mind in the initial hours after this horrible attack?
Well, the first question I have on my mind is how the investigative protocol took place. Now, we know that the FBI had contact with reporting parties that stated that Mr. Martin had made terrorist threats or very disparaging and violent comments about other people. And so the making of a terrorist threat, and that's the legal term for it, is a felony in most states. And so the FBI starts their investigation with reasonable suspicion and then starts obtaining information through digital footprints working towards probable cause. Once they've received probable cause, they can continue with their investigation. The thing that surprises me is that there's information that he was a licensed security guard. So what happens with the suspension of his permit or license? If he had a federal firearms license or a federal license for weapons, why is that not being suspended and the investigation being continued from that point with surveillance?
Right. We know that the FBI had checked him out at least twice because of these threats he apparently made to coworkers. On top of that, as you mentioned, he was licensed to carry firearms because of his job as a security guard. And we also know that at least one of his ex-wives divorced him, or at least one ex-wife divorced him because she said he was violent. You put all of that together, and it sounds like somebody who ought not to be allowed to carry a firearm legally.
And I agree, and the readers and the listeners need to understand that the FBI has over 1,000 investigations going on throughout the 50 states, and they have a multi-agency task force that is involved with 24/7 surveillance. They have to reconsider the investigative protocols and guidelines that they have in order to initiate ongoing investigations. The fact that he was contacted twice and nothing resulted from that is quite troubling.
We don't know yet how deeply in contact he was with ISIS or any of its, so-called leaders, but we know that, according to Catherine Herridge's excellent reporting, that ISIS has essentially claimed credit for what he has done. Is that just them claiming the glory after the blood has already been spilled, or do you think they're going to find that there was a connection with this guy ahead of the attack?
Well, I think that's the question that remains, so I won't speculate on that, but I will tell you that, of course, ISIS can can claim responsibility for those actions, but I think the real investigation is going back over the digital footprints, taking a look at what his contacts were with ISIS. But I mean, the bottom line is it really doesn't matter whether ISIS directed it or not. We had a person with terrorist intent that was able to complete the mission and kill 50 of our United States citizens and wound 53 others, including a police officer on the SWAT team.
There is one question remaining about the SWAT team and the length of time that it took them to enter the building. And I'm not trying to be critical here. I know things were chaotic in those early hours, but there was apparently a shootout with a police officer at the door. He took hostages and went inside, and then there was this 3-hour lag before the SWAT team went in. Why, Ron?
Well, I teach a lot of this stuff in active shooter. We actually produce an active shooter class for civilian and armed civilians. I will tell you that it really has a lot to depend with the intelligence gathering. You have an active shooter, but you don't really know what the inside of that building looks like. And unless he is actively shooting at other people at that time, it looks like he was gathering hostages, perhaps for the final shooting. It's very difficult for the SWAT team to be able to deploy that quickly. I also might add that what is very alarming here is we had one shooter and one soft target with as many people dead and injured as we had. Can you imagine what would happen in that same jurisdiction if it was like a Paris-like attack where they simultaneously had 3 attacks in different parts of the city? Yeah. Law enforcement was completely overwhelmed, and that's a lesson for everybody.
Yeah, we hate to give them ideas, but I'm sure that it's not something that they haven't already thought of.
Absolutely.
Ron Martinelli. Ron, thank you for your expertise.
No problem.